Hello and welcome to Physical Geology. I am Robert Lopez, your instructor for the course, and today I want to look at the minerals. Now for the first part here, you'll get this answer from my video lectures and also from the reading. Now the other thing that I want to point out here, this lab is pretty lengthy, but what I've done, I've copied all the places where you put answers or if you have to write something down. And I've moved that to something called an answer sheet. So I've posted an answer sheet also on Canvas. And so on this one, that way you would only print these pages and you would submit this and not the entire lab. So it'll really save you on printing. At any rate, I'll let you read through this first part here and I'm going to start working through the exercises. So as we go down here, the first thing we do is luster. And so remember, luster is the way the mineral reflects light. And we have two categories. We're either looking at something that's metallic or non-metallic. And based on the brilliance of the mineral, it's going to be very reflective, shiny or polished, or it could be pretty dull. For metallic luster, it also varies in terms of its brightness, because sometimes it could be shiny, silvery, or very gold looking, but also it could be sort of tarnished, right? So you have to kind of think about also magnetite. Magnetite sometimes doesn't look very metallic, although you may even see some rusty spots in it. So hints that it tells you that there's some iron or metal in it. So that's some of the things we'll look at. When we're looking at the metallic versus non-metallic luster, for the non-metallic category, NM here, we're looking at some adjectives. And I always tell students, what does it look like to you? And vitreous is a term that we all want to use here. It's something that's really, it describes glassy, kind of like broken glass, shiny, brilliant. Vitreous luster is common. Like for example, quartz can have some vitreous luster. Waxy is more of a little bit dull luster, sort of like candle wax here, more of a dull. Pearly will have some iridescence, a little bit of kind of maybe some pink or purple coming out that you'll see, like maybe when there's a little bit of oil on a thin layer of oil on water, you may see that iridescence. Pearly sometimes will show that as well. Earthy is the dull luster. Usually we do earthy, we're talking about kaolinite. Kaolinite is kind of earthy, powdery. Although for the samples I have today, I don't have any kaolinite, but kaolinite is a clay mineral. It's white and it has that earthy luster. So when we do kaolinite down here, you can say earthy luster for that non-metallic. Then greasy, usually greasy, we kind of think of resembling luster of grease or something oily, usually talc. Talc is a very soft mineral. Talc will have that grease. But you'll see then a silky luster, which is more like a satiny, kind of shiny in one direction. A resinous, I always think like tree sap, amber, that would be kind of a resinous luster. So we have a list of minerals here, and I'll show you these minerals in a moment. The first thing we'll do, I'll separate them into metallic and non-metallic luster. And then once we do that, we'll answer this table 1 here. Remember, you can answer this over in your lab answer sheet. So let's take a look at the minerals. So here are the minerals. And right away I see that there's one that's definitely shiny and looks like a metal. And that's this metal here, or this mineral here. Very shiny. And this is going to be a metallic mineral. So we'll separate that one over there. Even though this mineral down here, this biotite mica, can be very shiny. So there's a big shine, a big vitreous shine. It's not metallic. So this is an example of something that's just very shiny or vitreous, but it would be non-metallic. This mineral here as well, which is hornblende, also gives us that very shiny luster or vitreous luster. It's just a dark black mineral with vitreous luster, but you would not call that a metal. However, this mineral here I see a little bit of red. And that red is what I'm describing as that rust. And you can see there's a little bit of silver metallic. So this is another one that we'd say is a metallic luster. So basically here we have 2 metallic minerals. And then the rest of these would be non-metallic minerals. And also if you think about household items, keys on your keychain, metallic. Silverware, Your butter knife, metallic. The doorknob, if it's brassy, metallic, right? So think of it in those terms. So we'll look at gypsum and hornblende, the first two here. And so for gypsum, that's this mineral over here. Again, what would you describe this luster? Would you describe it as, well, it's certainly non-metallic, but we see that it has a really brilliant, bright shine in one direction. So you could call it vitreous, but it's not very shiny on this other side here. So maybe there's another term that can be used to describe the luster. So again, for the table, you're going to say gypsum is non-metallic. Then I want you to use an adjective, either pearly, waxy, vitreous, or satiny or silky. So think about what would best describe this one in terms of the adjective for its luster. The other mineral is hornblende. And so hornblende is this mafic mineral, this dark mineral. And we already mentioned a little bit about this one. It does have, in fact, it has kind of a splintery appearance. It's one of the characteristics of hornblende. It occurs in this prismatic shape here. And it has this really good reflection of light and really good luster. So that's because it cleaves or breaks in a preferred direction. We call that a cleavage direction. And you can see the shine on that. So this is, again, this mineral is not metallic. So you want to use an adjective to describe what would best describe this mineral. All right, so there's our hornblende. Now let's look at the next mineral. So the next two are talc and halite. So remember, halite's common table salt. Talc is your very soft mineral used for talcum powder, baby powder. So talc is this larger mineral here. If we look at this one, it might be kind of hard to tell. It has a little bit of shine, but it's pretty dull. I mean, you can describe whether it has a dull luster or, in fact, let's take a look right in this corner, see if I can zoom in on that. So there's, I mean, it might even be a waxy luster, but usually, so maybe a dull or waxy luster might be a good one for talc. So think about this one. It is very soft. You can see that it's been scratched. You can scratch it pretty easily with a fingernail as well. So it's a soft mineral and it's very powdery. So you can even call it earthy once you get the powder. But I think alone you might want to call it maybe a waxy or a dull luster there. So that's our talc. And then halite is this big salt crystal here. So remember, halite is common table salt. And when you look at this one, it has a little bit of shine. It's not as brilliant or as bright as a biotite mica or the hornblende. So you probably wouldn't call it vitreous, but certainly you'll call it maybe that's kind of bright there. So it's sort of a duller vitreous, not as bright. So you're using an adjective to describe what non-metallic luster this is showing there. So that's our halite. And then the next two minerals are, I talked about kaolinite, which I don't have. So that's non-metallic and it's an earthy luster. But let's look at quartz and galena. So quartz is this mineral right here. And note that quartz kind of breaks in these random fractures. But right away I see that there's quite a bit of shine. It's certainly more, it's more bright than the halite. So again, quartz, usually we describe quartz as having a vitreous luster. So here we can say that quartz does have that shiny luster, vitreous. In fact, this one here is called milky quartz here. I mean, a little bit of rose quartz in there as well, but it's milky quartz. Again, non-metallic. And then the galena is this metallic mineral. We already mentioned that galena is metallic, but in terms of its brilliance, it does reflect light pretty. So this one's not tarnished. It's certainly an opaque mineral, but it's showing us a really good brilliance there. So you want to record that as metallic mineral that's bright, right? So that's our galena. And then for the last two, magnetite and biotite, we already mentioned. We already mentioned a little bit about magnetite, how it has that sort of rust, but you can see the metal in there, kind of the silvery metal. So it's certainly a metallic mineral. And then for the biotite mica, again, we're describing this one as having that really good, there it is, that really good cleavage. You see there, really good cleavage. And that cleavage is what we want to say is vitreous. So this is the non-metallic mineral that has that vitreous luster. So again, even though it's dark, it's not metallic. This is just a very shiny. That's because micas cleave in one direction, or in other words, they break in one direction, and it's called a basal cleavage. You want to complete this data table, and now we'll move on to section 1.2. Now we'll look at section 1.2 on mineral streak, and I always say odor, and I'll describe the smell because you want to smell the streak, because especially if there's any sulfur in the mineral, because you'll get that rotten egg smell. Streak is really described as the color of the mineral in the powdered form. And you usually use a streak plate, which is a porcelain plate, and you scratch the mineral across the surface of the streak plate, and it leaves some characteristic streak. And so we want to record that, and also you'll want to smell it. And for both pyrite, and actually this is hematite over here, you'll see that for pyrite, the streak is a black streak, and there's no smell. So again, we're going to be filling out this table 2 down here. So for pyrite, you would say the mineral color is a brass color, and I'll show you one here in a moment, and its streak color is black. You can see it right there. And the odor, that it's not going to have a smell. Hematite here, so this is actually the specular hematite, and I'll show you another sample of specular hematite. But you can see it's a sort of a silvery gray mineral, so that'd be the color of the mineral. The color is a red streak. That's very characteristic of hematite. Hematite will give you that red streak. And then again, this one's having no smell. It's an iron oxide. It's not going to give you any smell. For the other two, red hematite and salarite, I have those over here. So let's look at the camera here. So here I have some minerals and a streak plate. And so this is a red hematite, and it's really a rusty version of the specular hematite. So the specular hematite, this one here. In fact, let's test that streak for the. So you scratch it on there, you can see it's giving you a red streak. So that's very characteristic of the specular hematite. For the red hematite, so you want to describe this as a red color. And then you also want to say that it's going to have a red streak, right? So you can see that red streak as well there. And then this one again is no smell. So that's our specular hematite here, and then our red hematite. And then for pyrite, we already mentioned that here's a big brassy cube of pyrite. So if I scratch here, you can see it's going to give you that black streak, kind of a dark black streak. Now this last mineral here is a mineral with up to 6 directions of cleavage. You can see that the shiny cleavage direction. So you can call this, in fact, this one has a couple of different ways you can describe the luster. It is vitreous. I see that really brilliant shine, bright shine. But I also see that sort of ambery resin texture to it, or luster. So you can sort of, especially down over here, that little red area that kind of looks like amber or tree sap. So this is a good example of something you can say has an amber luster. But this one, we do the streak test on it. Give it a hard streak. You can see it's giving us a yellow streak. And this one, I'll tell you, I can smell it right now. It smells like rotten eggs, a strong sulfur smell. And even when you smell the mineral, it's giving you a strong sulfur smell. So anyways, for sphalerite, you want to say it's a brownish red mineral with that amber luster, vitreous amber luster. It's giving us a yellow streak, and it is giving us that rotten egg or sulfur smell. So that you would complete this data table here. All right, well, let's stop here for now before we go on to section 1.3.